Welcome back, everybody, to KFR News Radio. Here it is. It's Mike and Glenn back at you again with another episode. And here we go. Episode 2. Mike, how you doing, buddy?
I'm good. How are you?
Not bad.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk about the movies we're going to talk about. We're talking about, I think, last week you picked They'll Love Me When I'm Dead and Outlaw King. Mm-hmm. But first, before we get into that, is there any movie you watched last week that you feel is noteworthy?
This is now sounding way too newscasty, and I love it.
You got me into it. I decided to just go with it.
It's perfect. I saw 2 movies last week. I saw them both on Saturday morning. I saw Overlord.
Mm-hmm. As did I.
I saw a Girl in a Spider's Web.
Oh, I did not see that yet. What'd you think of Overlord? I actually really enjoyed it.
Really?
Yeah.
It's actually one that I didn't enjoy that much.
Really? See,
yeah.
I thought it was just a ridiculous movie, which is why I liked it.
It was an absolutely ridiculous movie.
Yeah.
And, I think I had too much hype in the fact that J.J. Abrams was doing a World War II movie.
Yeah.
And then, of course, there had to be like a twist.
See, I don't put J.J. Abrams on much of a pedestal as most people do.
Yeah, I mean, I don't either. I was just like, okay, his style plus World War II, okay.
Yeah, I mean, nice. He didn't direct it; he just produced it.
Really?
It was actually directed.
I hate the marketing where it's like J.J. Abrams.
Yeah, it was directed by Julius Avery, who, if you are like me and haven't heard of him, the only movie of his that I've seen is called Son of a Gun, which is starring Ewan McGregor, and that movie was okay.
Yeah.
Did you see Son of a Gun?
I did not.
Yeah, it's essentially like a prison break movie with Ewan McGregor.
Interesting.
And it has its moments, but overall it's just kind of lackluster.
Yeah, I don't even think I've heard of that. But it all makes sense now why this movie wasn't as fun for me as I thought it would be.
I thought it was. I wasn't expecting too much until critics started getting into it and they really liked it. But I mean I had fun. It's an absolutely not perfect movie, but I enjoyed it.
Yeah. I can't really say too much about it. It's just it had a lot of moments where it was pretty fun. Like, it was over the top ridiculous the whole time.
Yeah. What'd you think of Girl, the Spider in the Web and the thing?
The Girl in the Spider's Web.
The Girl in the Spider's Web. Yeah.
I thought it was good. I thought it definitely kind of gave it more of like an origin story to like her whole past.
Yeah.
Which is cool, but I've never seen the other movies, so I don't know if they've done that before. But as far as the American version goes, you understand why like she saves women and stuff like that. So that was pretty.
That's cool. Getting a little backstory. Other than Overlord, the 2 movies I saw, they're older movies because you probably know this. I have this book that's 1001 movies you must see before you die. I'm kind of just going through that. So I've been watching a lot of classic movies lately. I watched Harold and Maude. Which is directed by Hal Ashby. It's essentially about this guy this teenager who's obsessed with death, and he goes to funerals for fun, and he meets this older woman and just becomes infatuated with her. It sounds really weird. They build like a romantic relationship, but it actually flows really nicely and doesn't feel forced.
Yeah.
And, to the point where it's not really creepy like you would think. I mean, us stupid Americans think everything is creepy.
Duh.
But, I actually really enjoyed it. It's pretty funny. And then I also watched African Queen, directed by John Huston, Danny Huston's dad. And actually, John Huston is in the documentary we watched.
I know.
Which is a perfect segue.
I also, it was weird to see. I was like, oh, that was his dad?
Yeah.
Whoa.
So yeah, that's a good segue into our first movie, They'll Love Me When I'm Dead.
Orson Welles was the ultimate independent filmmaker.
Somewhere between Zen master and God.
No other director has been held up to such an impossible standard.
Citizen Kane, the greatest motion picture ever made. Do you agree?
No, certainly not.
That's
My
interesting.
next one is, though.
Could you give us the title of that?
I haven't decided what it is yet.
Oh.
I was when you first told me we were going to watch this movie, I thought we were going to watch the movie he made because they released that on Netflix in kind of a parallel to this coming out on Netflix as well. So I was a little disappointed we weren't watching that, but you know what? Maybe another episode.
I didn't even see it, but now we can get a little excited for the actual movie.
Yeah.
Maybe you'll even recommend it at the end of this, but probably not. Who knows?
Yeah, this movie was directed by Morgan Neville, who I don't know if you recognize that name, but we talked about a movie he made last week. Can you guess? It's a documentary.
Out of the like 75 that we've done, was it like RBG or?
No, it's Won't You Be My Neighbor.
That was the next one I was gonna guess. Out of the two documentaries.
Yeah, he directed Won't You Be My Neighbor, and you can kind of get a sense of that while watching this, because it really, more so than other documentaries that are about filmmakers, really delves into kind of who he was. It shows the good and the bad.
Yeah.
And I really enjoyed that. I'm sure you I mean, the reason you picked it is because I don't want to say I'm obsessed with Orson Welles, but, you know, I really like...
Well, he does look like he could be your father. That's all I'm saying.
He does. I really enjoy like the history of cinema and you know, how we got to have movies the way we have them now, and he actually is a huge part as to why movies are shot in more interesting ways now. With Citizen Kane, he
absolutely is.
He created like a whole bunch of different angles. He did things. There's actually a quote in "They'll Love Me When I'm Dead" where it's kind of in the intro. He's being shot at a weird angle. And people would ask him, why are you putting the camera over there? And he would respond, why not? And that's really kind of just a testament of how much of a pioneer he was for the time. You know, back then movies were just kind of shot like they were plays, and he really just played with camera position and angle and all that, and really did a lot for modern filmmaking.
Yeah, I mean, he was a legend early in his career too.
Yeah,
from the start.
Absolutely. I feel like I'm gonna have a lot to say about this, and you
I mean,
probably won't.
My introduction to Orson Welles was you with Citizen Kane.
Oh yeah,
and that was 2014. My God.
Yeah.
And that was when I first started on this film adventure. So like I have to rewatch that. And
yeah.
Do a whole new thing.
Yeah, I kind of wish I got a chance to rewatch it before this, but I wrote a 20-page paper on Citizen Kane in college, so it's not that I haven't watched it a lot, but
hey, we're here to talk about it. You just slap those lips away.
Yeah. It was just kind of interesting seeing how someone who is so revered today, like it kind of starts out with them explaining how he was blacklisted from Hollywood essentially for what would be widely considered flops, but like the flops weren't due to his negligence at all. What was the movie they made?
Oh man,
they were talking about Touch of Evil. Touch of Evil was the movie that they were saying, and I actually did a little research into Touch of Evil. I personally haven't seen Touch of Evil, so I can't really say anything other than the Rotten Tomato scores I'm going to give you. But they made a 1958 version, or the 1958 version is the original one.
Yeah.
And it was 93 minutes. Then 20 years later, about in 1978, they released another version. The 1978 version still wasn't his vision.
Yeah.
But it was more of his vision than the original one, and that was more widely accepted by critics. And then in 1998, after he was dead, they took notes and memos that he had written to the studio and edited it to the way they think he wanted it through those notes and memos, and that is considered the most closely Wellesian, to make up a word, version, and is most closely to his vision, and is also considered the best vision. So they actually fired him mid Touch of Evil filming, and it ended up being worse for wear because
for something that could have ended up amazing if they just let him do his thing.
And that was kind of like the thing I respect so much about Orson Welles. Many people widely consider him like the first independent director, because he really didn't give a shit what studios thought. I mean, obviously he wanted money and everything, but he knew that he knew what he was doing, and would try to persuade studios to let him do what he was doing. And that's kind of what this entire documentary is about, is how he kind of just went with it and started doing his own thing again with what's the main movie? Other Side of the Wind.
Yeah.
I have so many notes here with so many.
I
different
almost want to keep saying
titles.
Gone with the Wind, but I'm like, that is definitely not him.
Yeah,
Don't
Gone
say
with the
it out
Wind.
loud.
Yeah, Gone with the Wind is much different.
Gone with the Other Side of the Wind.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, it was really just interesting because as much as I respected Orson Welles, there's kind of like this, this reverence and for lack of a better word, fear you have of a man just because of how much of a legend he is.
Yeah.
And I was surprised to see just how loved he was by his friends, and
just that, like, they just follow him for years.
Yeah, they follow him for years. You see the good side of him and the bad side of him. You see the controlling side of him and the loving side of him. Because really, like, this director Morgan Neville, he did the same thing with Won't You Be My Neighbor, to a lesser extent, just because Mr. Rogers was such a good, wholehearted person,
saint.
Yeah, really. But like, he really showed both sides of Orson Welles and showed the good side, the controlling side, because he wanted to make what he wanted to make.
Yeah.
But then also, like towards the end of the movie, they show a shot that was filmed. I forget which director shot it, but it was a little cameo that Orson Welles had shot for a movie after he had, or right before he had died, and they just have a clip of him laughing. And
It was like an interview for something.
Yeah, and John Huston, who played essentially the Orson Welles character, even though he would very much deny that it's supposed to be about him. John Huston, the director, also played the Orson Welles-like character in The Other Side of the Wind. And he saw that, and he was just amazed that Orson Welles would let someone film him laughing, because it kind of shows you that he wanted to control.
It brought him to tears too.
Yeah. It wanted to show. It showed how he wanted to control how people viewed him, but also that like everyone knew him on a deeper level and loved him on a deeper level, and I really I enjoyed that.
Yeah, I mean I really enjoyed this one too. It was you pretty much touched on almost all the bases, so I don't really have to do much.
I wrote 2.5 pages of notes on this one.
Yeah, I mean, I wrote a page. We pretty much have the same thing.
Yeah.
I talked about already how I didn't watch many of his movies, so I can't really relate to too many of these things.
Mm-hmm.
But Citizen Kane, I have to rewatch regardless, just because I've so far in my movie career, I guess you could say now, that I should definitely check up on it.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about They'll Love Me When I'm Dead.
Well, I mean, you kind of have to talk about, because They'll Love Me When I'm Dead is, while it is a story of the making of his last movie, it really just kind of touches on how, like, Citizen Kane really created an unrealistic expectation for Orson Welles by the studios, because it's such, like, it's not a perfect movie by any means, but it's such a great movie. It's kind of, to a lesser extent, it's kind of like M. Night Shyamalan with The Sixth Sense. Like, you hit it out of the park the first time. And don't get me wrong, I'm not comparing M. Night Shyamalan to Orson Welles, because even Orson Welles' worst movie's still pretty dang good.
Yeah.
But they both have this
understandable one.
Yeah, they both have these unrealistic expectations that were created of them because of their first big movie.
Yeah.
And it's really kind of unfair in a sense. And another thing I thought was pretty cool is they talked about John Huston a lot, because they were really good friends. Both directors were really good friends. But John Huston overall had a more successful career, and that was because you probably heard this rule when it comes to filmmaking, the make one for them, make one for you rule.
Yeah, they even say that in the documentary.
Yeah. So John Huston would go ahead and make movies like The Treasure of the Sierra Madre, which is, for the time, very dark. That's another movie I watched recently because it's in that book. and it's really dark and shows like the dark side of men. But then he would also turn around and make a movie like Annie, which I didn't know he directed Annie.
Yeah, I didn't either.
Yeah,
that was a fun little thing to see.
Yeah, so like,
and then he's willing to be in stuff with Orson Welles, like this one.
Absolutely, and the interesting, like, Orson Welles was such, for better or worse, whether it makes him look like a better person or a worse person, he refused to kind of bend his morals to that to make what he thought as kind of like dumb cinema.
He had a vision and he wanted it to be done the way he saw it.
Exactly, and as pretentious as that might be, you know, you gotta respect a man for even at the risk of his own career refusing to bend to the studio's will.
Yeah. Can we talk about Alan Cumming?
Oh yeah, Alan Cumming. Alan Cumming was the narrator of this, and they show him a few times because it's kind of like he's he's kind of reviewing everything. But
I'm sitting there watching it. I'm relaxed. I'm ready to see some Orson Welles. Next thing you know, I see some Alan Cumming, and I'm like, what?
Yeah, I thought he did a great job.
No, he really did. It was just like, that's the last person you would expect.
Oh, absolutely.
You're just like, oh, hey, Alan Cumming, how you doing?
Yeah, he's got a great voice for it.
He does.
I mean, I know he didn't write it, but he had a.
He was narrating.
He was narrating, but he did really good. He kind of fit the same tone that Citizen Kane is in.
Yeah. And then they had him messing with some like film stuff too, and like they had him.
I think it's called a movieator, or Orson Welles says it's called names it in one of the scenes. I can't remember. Let's see. Yeah, it was just kind of filled with a lot of interesting thoughts and kind of visions into Orson Welles' head. I forget who stated this. I'm really bad at taking notes. I gotta get better at taking notes.
Yeah,
but someone
my problem is I wrote like too much, so I'm like looking at all of it.
Someone said at some point that Orson Welles stated, "No story has a happy ending."
Oh man, I was gonna say that one.
No story has a happy ending unless you stop telling it before it's over.
Which I think fits this whole thing perfectly, and even like I don't even want to say like it's a good thing that like he died and didn't get to finish The Other Side of the Wind, because like to me that's just super fitting quote. Just like, hey, I've been working on this for so long and this could possibly be the greatest thing, but hey,
no story has a happy ending unless you stop telling it before it's over.
Happy stories don't have, or whatever.
Yeah, happy stories don't have. No story has a happy ending unless you stop telling before it's over. And it's really, I mean, while I don't agree with it overall, I definitely see what he's talking about, because nothing is truly wrapped up in a nice little bow.
I think for this situation it worked out perfectly, because even at the end of the documentary they say another quote. And you're just left like, oh, okay, wow, it goes full circle. Look at that.
Yeah, and it's really kind of touching on that. They talked about how he didn't finish a lot of his projects.
Yeah, there was a lot of projects.
He had like they mentioned like 4 or 5 movies that went unfinished, and they speculated as to why, whether like he didn't have the focus to do it. I can't remember all the details.
Yeah, there was one where he just had to loop the actors or something like that.
Yeah, and
he just never went back to it.
There are some people that say that like, oh, he probably just doesn't love filmmaking. And there's like a whole bunch of different speculations. None of them of which the people saying them are believing or probably believe, but they're just kind of stating what rumors were. Yeah. And to me, it just really seemed like he was a perfectionist, because I've done that. I mean, with the movies we made, with especially The Mormons Are Coming, it took me forever.
I can recall.
And it's only a 15-minute...
And I remember certain friends who were just like, Mike, how's it going over there?
And really, like...
I'll get there.
And while, again, I'm not on Orson Welles' level in the least bit, I can completely understand the not wanting to release something until it's 100% perfect.
Until you want it to be your vision.
Yeah, and at some point, like, I completely... connect with that, but at some point you just gotta let it go.
You gotta get there.
Exactly.
Yeah, but he had too much pride.
Yeah.
Too much. overall, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was great.
Same here.
It was edited in such a chaotic style that fits so well for the whole scenario that was going on during the project for the last, or well,
Definitely.
not last, but for the years that went on for it.
One thing I noticed,
thought it was well.
It's just kind of going back. One thing I noticed is they interviewed his daughter, but never shot her in a way that you saw her completely.
Yeah.
And I wonder if that was like a stylistic choice, like, you know,
there was a lot of stylistic.
He never saw her
points
wholly.
of views.
That might be me overthinking it, but like, is it he never saw her completely, or is it more just probably just protect her privacy? She didn't want to be shown completely.
Hey, there's no overthinking here. We're here to think.
We're here
to think and talk.
We're here to think and talk.
But hey, that if so, that'd be pretty cool. But I feel like me seeing it, I feel like it was probably just, hey, we got this cool shot, or maybe she just didn't ask for her face.
Yeah.
Maybe. Who knows?
That's very possible.
Let's speculate like a lot of people do about Orson Welles. Let's get this.
He was fat. No.
He did get plump at the end.
He did. They everyone always talks about how big he was, and then they show pictures of him when he's like my size. I'm like, that's not that big.
Yeah.
Because he just looks like my size. But then like they showed a shot of him. I'm like, okay, he's a big man.
I like the videos and photos that they had of him back when he was 25, and he just looked like a baby. And then I look at myself, I'm like, do I look like a baby?
No,
do I still
no,
look like a baby?
He just had a really round voice face.
He had a great voice though.
He did have a great voice, yeah.
The whole way through.
But yeah, I just think it's a really humble and intricate look at a legend's life, essentially. Kind of really humanizes him, which I love it when movies can take legends and humanize them, and make the person look more approachable.
Yeah, and that was just like one setting of his life, just for that basically one movie. They did like narrow most of his stuff down, like throughout his life, but like imagine a whole documentary about the dude by that guy again, Morgan Neville. Yeah.
I would love to see a documentary about the making of Citizen Kane, because honestly, that shit was crazy. That's what my paper was. My 20-page paper was about the making of Citizen Kane in college.
Well, Mike, I think you've got a project ahead of you.
I guess I do got a project ahead of me, even though I'm pretty sure I got most of my information from a documentary about the making of Citizen Kane, so it's already been done.
Let us raise our cups to our crazy and beloved profession, to the movies.
A lot of people want to see The Other Side of the Wind get made.
It is the greatest movie never released, the bookend to Citizen Kane.
What did Orson really mean by it? What is its true form?
Orson said, "They'll love me when I'm dead."
Glenjamin, what is our next movie?
Well, Michael Jamin, our next movie just happens to be Outlaw King.
There can be no peace. The people are desperate for justice.
There are some of us who believe we can take our country back if we can unify and rise up behind one leader. Perhaps you.
Directed by David Mackenzie. Outlaw King is about, that guy. That one guy, Robert the Bruce. And it takes place just after the rebellion of William Wallace.
Yeah, that's actually one thing I did not know. I did not watch a single trailer for this. All I saw was a poster of him holding a shield. That's all I knew going in.
All I saw was his face, and I was like, that's enough.
And honestly, I want to go into movies more like that, just not knowing anything except for the name and the poster.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was actually surprised to find out that this was based on a true story, and kind of follows almost immediately the events of Braveheart.
Yeah, it's pretty much it's touch and go. Like it's just puts it down and it's like, oh, we're right there. It is. We're back into William Wallace territory. Here we go. And you don't even realize until I think 15 minutes in.
Yeah.
And then they drop that, and it's like, whoa.
Yeah. And speaking of 15 minutes in, the very first, well,
there.
not the very first shot, like the second shot, I think, after they do the credit with the candle and everything.
Yeah, there's the candle, and then
it's a very long tracking shot.
Yep, it's almost exactly 9 minutes,
and it is incredible because, like, one thing I wrote down, it really makes you feel like you're at the Renaissance Fair.
Mm-hmm.
Just, I mean, in a more badass way. You don't see just fat people with neck beards. But it's
giant turkey legs and stuff like that.
It's really just a fantastic way to immerse yourself in the world of Scotland in the 1300s. I think it was 1305 or 6 or something.
Yeah, because right off the bat, you've got a king forgiving a couple noblemen, and then it goes into like a little play sword fight. And next thing you know, here's some other things going down. And it was a really epic, almost 9 minute long shot. It was really nice.
So this is I think you know this. This is directed by David Mackenzie, who directed Hell or High Water. Mm-hmm. And I love it when directors can have such different feeling movies.
Yeah.
Like the themes are kind of the same, more or less, but like, you know, you go from Texas in the 80s or 90s and go all the way to Scotland in the 1300s.
1300s.
Yeah, exactly. But overall, I just really thought, you know, just learning about the Scottish Rebellion was just so fascinating to me. I think that was probably my favorite part of it.
It was. I know, and this obviously this is going to be, it's like big comparison. Braveheart, I feel like I learned obviously more from this than I did Braveheart. Also because Braveheart isn't, you know, exactly fact friendly.
Yeah, after I watched this movie, I read an article by Popular Mechanics, and it broke down like the historical accuracy between.
I think what's really funny is we read the same article.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So it breaks down, but it compares Outlaw King and Braveheart.
Yeah.
And breaks them down into accuracy for the overall story, weapons, clothes and armor, and the big battles. And Outlaw King won every single category.
Yeah.
So and they admitted that it wasn't 100% accurate, but overall it's a more accurate story and film than Braveheart.
Yeah, and Braveheart had a much larger scope, and it just blew it out of the water.
And honestly, like I like Braveheart, but I think it gets way too much credit. Like,
I haven't seen Braveheart since probably mid 2000s.
It's another one of those movies where like it's like Titanic, where in scope, yes, it's fantastic and you know, immersive. But honestly, I felt like it was a soap opera when I watched it. Like it's
all
so
about that end scene.
Yeah, it's all about it's all built up to that. It's all fairly melodramatic and everything. It's just, but I do like Braveheart, but I feel like it gets way too much credit.
No, there's no.
Granted,
it's a good movie.
It was the '90s, you know.
What it is.
People's opinions of movies were different then, although not really, because they still like cheesy epicness.
Yeah.
But I thought this was fantastic. Honestly, I didn't think it was fantastic until maybe the last half hour, 45 minutes.
Yeah, so I was watching this movie last night with Kira, and we got about 45 minutes in before I was like, oh man, I'm getting really tired. And A, it's mainly because I work UPS, I work really early in the morning.
Yeah.
B, also because it does take a little bit to pick up, but then once it picks up, baby, it picks up. It gets there.
Yeah, and there's a lot of really good performances in it. Like Chris Pine, honestly, I forgot he was American for a little bit.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm not Scottish, so I'm not someone who can say that it was a good Scottish accent. But
he seemed like he pulled it off.
He did, and
he probably played it safe because he was very soft spoken most of the time. But that could be me. I don't know.
And I think my favorite part about it is it's just kind of fits into that. It's a subgenre of movie that, because it's kind of true, is talked about a lot, and it's just England in medieval times were just a bunch of dicks.
Yeah, dude. They were the worst.
Terrible people.
Yeah.
There were some things where, I was like, oh, that's probably just exaggerated.
No.
There's
a lot of stuff in there. I was like, yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah, I mean, I knew they were terrible, but one thing I thought that was probably exaggerated was them arresting his wife and then putting her in the cage.
Yeah,
off the side of the cage. Nope, they did that.
The word there was relentless. They were relentless back then.
Yeah,
and ridiculous.
But I thought his wife, the woman who played his wife, did really good. Florence, I think her name's Pugh. Florence Pugh.
Yeah, Pugh.
I actually had to look up how to pronounce it because it's P-U-G-H.
Luckily, I had a schoolmate whose last name was Pugh. He's actually into acting right now, so that's cool.
Well, there you go.
Anyway, segueing back into the film. Yeah, I think everybody was great, but there's one performance that I was like, this freaking dude. Yeah, we both know. It's ATG.
ATJ. Aaron Taylor Johnson.
Dude, man, he's nuts.
He is.
Literally,
honestly,
in this movie, he's nuts.
There were some parts. Overall, I thought he was really good.
Yeah,
he's kind of like a more toned down Nick Cage, where he's super intense.
Yeah.
But unlike Nick Cage, for him it's realistic. I love Nick Cage. I'm not shitting on Nick Cage or nothing.
Nick Cage
but he has that same intensity.
Mm-hmm.
But
it works here.
There's this scene. You remember the scene where they on Palm Sunday in the church, they all go into church and they just murder everyone in the church. And rightfully so. They murder the English knights who have been pillaging their homes.
Yeah, but, so the king took away his name and he's just screaming his last name while murdering
and
people.
It's kind of funny, but it works.
Yeah, dude, it really does. And then,
I loved it.
And then him during, just the whole movie, dude. He was great.
Yeah, he's really good.
Now there was another one that I did enjoy because he felt kind of realistic, maybe a little too villainy, but at the same time there was one scene where he gave a pretty good performance. The Prince Edward, Prince of the Wales. I thought he gave a pretty good performance.
Oh yeah, Bailey Howell.
Yeah.
Yeah, overall he was pretty good.
It mainly turned into okay, he's pretty good when towards the end of the movie when he and Robert are fighting. That's after that I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's pretty realistic. I can get behind that.
Yeah, the funny thing about when they fight is it's right after the English army retreats, I'm gonna kind of delve into actual history right now, but the actual Battle of Loudoun or however you pronounce it, which was the actual battle it's the climax of the movie. It's a battle that actually happened.
Yeah.
Scotland had 600 soldiers in that.
Mm-hmm.
England had 3,000.
Yeah, they did.
And the casualties, because they didn't really keep absolute track of that back then, for casualties for Scotland, it just says low casualties. And
that's because in comparison, it's crazy.
But yeah, so when England starts retreating there, they Chris Pine, Robert the Bruce, and Prince Edward, they start fighting.
Mm-hmm.
And no one's paying attention to them fighting.
Yeah, everybody's watching them retreat. They're like, oh!
Yeah, I mean, I probably would too. So, but it's just the way it was shot. It was kind of funny. Going back,
then you got 2 or 3 people who actually turn around. They're like, oh.
Going back into more history, when England, when Valence ambushes them at night on their camp, it's the first battle of the movie. In history, the Scottish Army had 4,500 people at that battle. 4,000 of them died.
Jesus! During the ambush?
During the ambush, yeah, and that's probably. While they showed that they got their asses kicked, they did not show that they got 4,000 people killed. So this is really in the synopsis.
The English army had 4,000 down?
No, the Scottish people had 4,500
okay, I was about
people,
to say.
and 4,000 people died. And that just goes to show you how
That's a comeback right there.
Like the synopsis says it's a true David and Goliath story, because it really is.
Yeah,
you lose 8/9 of your army. I don't know how to make that lower. 8/9 of your army, and you still beat them.
Yeah,
it's ridiculous.
It would have been crazy if they never ambushed them in the first place. It
probably would have been a much quicker battle.
Yeah, they would have been wrecked.
We have 50 men to fight the strongest army in the world. We're dealing with outlaws, man. The king will hang him for treason. If I die tomorrow...
No, I won't speak
If
with
I
it.
die tomorrow, do whatever you must. Do you understand?
I read a review before we started this, because I was just touching up for Outlaw King, and I was actually on Letterboxd, and I was scrolling down past some reviews, trying to pass the time waiting for you. And my favorite review so far for Outlaw King is, heard this movie's got Chris Pine nude, so I wanted to see some Chris Pine dick. 10 out of 10 would come back to see anytime.
You don't even see it that long.
Yeah, it's like...
And he comes out of cold water.
But it's hilarious.
He comes out of cold water after it, too. But yeah, honestly, after watching this movie, the Scottish Rebellion, it's like my new historical fascination. I was up reading about it for a while.
You gotta love a movie that actually makes you want to read up about the history.
Yeah.
Because I don't do that often, and right after this movie, I was like, okay, time to brush up on my Robert the Bruce.
I do it quite a bit, but that's just because I love history. But this one, it got me more interested than the story of Braveheart did.
Exactly. Yeah, I think that's exactly what made this so great. Is we're like, wow, this was actually really well done. I think I want to learn about it some more.
Yeah.
Because everybody was either likable, or you're like, wow, England's a bunch of dicks, or just the whole in between. It was great.
And not only did Scotland, I was reading more about it, not only did Scotland win the war for this and get their freedom back, but there's a movie coming out later called Mary Queen of Scots, and it's kind of about this, at least the mother of this king.
Yeah.
There came a point where England had no more heirs, so the next person in line for the throne was a descendant of Robert the Bruce. So not only did they get their freedom, but eventually the King of Scots took over as the King of England as well, and that is why they are now part of the United Kingdom. It's not because Scotland lost; it's because the King of Scots outlived anyone that was an heir.
He did live a good amount of time too.
Yeah,
it was impressive.
And I'm not. It wasn't Robert the Bruce. It was 300 years later, one of his descendants.
Oh yeah, that guy. It was Robert the Sixth, I think.
Yeah,
7th.
But
John the Sixth.
John the Sixth. Yeah, that just blew my mind. He was the son of Mary Queen of Scots. Another movie I'm actually pretty excited for, Mary Queen of Scots, with Saoirse Ronan and Margot Robbie, or Robbie, however the hell you pronounce her name.
I think I don't know.
But yeah, I think Scottish history is my new fascination.
I think the only other thing that I really had to say was I really enjoyed the battle scenes. There was a lot of blood and carnage. They really showed you the style of executions that they did back then, and torture.
Absolutely.
So that was really cool. There's actual visuals in this movie that you're like, wow, that looked real as hell. So I think they really did well on that too. Overall, I'd watch this over Braveheart any day.
Yeah, I would too.
And hell, I just watched this movie just to see Chris Pine in a mullet.
I am King of Scots. Not of the land, but of the people. We could fight for God, for country, for family. I do not care, so long as you fight!
So, I think we've come to the part of the podcast where we make our decision. We will decide every movie we talk about if it deserves to go on our KFR shelf which, let's just pretend it's a real shelf that has actual DVDs on it or film reels, whatever you want. So, with They'll Love Me When I'm Dead, do you believe it goes on the shelf? Remember, we want to keep this as, strict as possible because we don't want to just throw everything on there. You and I enjoy a lot of movies. We don't want to just have like 1,000 movies up by the time we review 400 of them.
I did really enjoy this movie, but honestly, I don't know if I'd put it on the shelf, mainly because if I'm going to compare it to, let's say, Won't You Be My Neighbor, that would be one I'd want to rewatch again. I'd take it off the shelf, I'd dust it off, and I'd put that in. I think because I myself am not a huge Orson Welles fan, I don't think I'll put it on the shelf, but overall it was a good movie, but unfortunately it's not going on the shelf for me. All
right. Well, I mean, I think I told you this. For a movie to go on the KFR shelf, it has to be a unanimous decision. So it looks like it's not going on the shelf. But but I would agree. I would say, it's a really good documentary. It shows a side of Orson Welles you don't ever really hear about or see. Yeah. But overall, it's just kind of like a typical documentary. And I love Orson Welles, so like I wanted this to be on the shelf. We heard all about it. We heard all about it. I wanted this to be on the shelf, but it doesn't hit that chord that really makes it a superb documentary. It's really good, and I think people should watch it. But I would have to agree, it is not going to be going on the KFR shelf.
Look at that.
Yeah.
Our first not fight. We still.
I mean, I just disagreements don't mean we're fighting.
No. It was funny.
All right. So, moving on to Outlaw King.
Outlaw King. What can I say?
So, I'll start with this one.
Yeah, please do.
Just how it created a fascination for that history with me, it really got me interested. And while admittedly I was not really into it until about 45 minutes to an hour in, it's really just it really just grabs you in that last half, it doesn't let go, and it's filled with great performances, great cinematography. The music is weird at times, and I'm not talking about like the normal music. There's this part where the Robert the Bruce's father is dying and he says something, and there's just like this really heroic trumpet that plays, but it plays for like 10 seconds and it's not in the scene at all. So it's really weird. This one, I kept going back and forth of whether or not it deserves to go on the shelf. But I think just for the fascination it created in me alone, I would say, yeah, it probably deserves to go on the shelf.
Wow. I'm going to have to disappoint you, Mike.
Oh, yeah?
It's like, no, I'm not. It was such a good movie. I'm putting that shit on the shelf so hard.
I knew you were going to do that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's by no means a perfect movie.
No.
But there's enough to talk about.
It held its own, and it made you want to research more after the movie was done.
Absolutely.
And I think that, on its own, deserves it.
Yeah, and kind of going back to the whole makes you want to research thing, if I didn't already know as much about Orson Welles as I did before watching They'll Love Me When I'm Dead, it probably would not make me want to look up more.
Yeah.
It is a good movie, but not really worth the shelf. It's on Netflix, so I do suggest people see it, but Outlaw King is just really, I didn't know I was this interested in Scottish history. And it really just grabbed me.
Yeah.
So, now we have come to the time.
The time.
Outlaw King is on the shelf. We have two more movies for next week.
First movie on the shelf.
First movie on the shelf. I mean, that might not happen every week.
No.
But it did this week. And we got two movies, or I got two movies.
Oh, you got two, huh?
I got two. Yeah. So, the first one is called Bomb City.
Okay, here we go.
Bomb City is a crime drama about a cultural version of a group of punk rockers in a conservative Texas town. I read up on this, and it's essentially there's this punk rock scene in Texas. I think it was actually in Oklahoma, but in the movie it's in Texas, and they kind of clash with, like, for lack of a better word, the popular kids.
Yeah.
but it's based on a true story. It looks really interesting to me. It came out of, I want to say it was in Sundance either this year or last year, and I've been interested in it for a while. So I'm going to see that. That's on Amazon Prime. If anyone wants to watch that before our next episode, kind of follow what we're talking about. But that's the first movie for next week. Now, the second one I kept going back and forth about. I was originally going to say Widows, but then one of my friends, that might come up later. One of my friends reminded me that the Coen Brothers' new movie, The Ballad of Buster Scruggs, came out today.
I knew you were going to do it.
And you know me and the fucking Coen Brothers.
Yeah.
They are my favorite directors, so the second movie for next week is The Ballad of Buster Scruggs.
I had a feeling, an absolute feeling. Like, there was two movies that I knew you were probably going to pick, and that was definitely one of them.
Was the other one The Other Side of the Wind?
Yeah.
I didn't want to go Orson Welles too hard the first few weeks, so we might do that later down the road. I definitely thought about it, but the second that Alan told me that The Ballad of Buster Scruggs came out...
Yeah, actually, I just saw it. I think it was the other day that they were announcing that. I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah. So for those of you who don't know what it is, first of all, it's the Coen Brothers. That's all you fucking need to know, so go goddamn watch it. It is an anthology that's comprised of 6 stories, so essentially like 6 vignettes that take place in the same universe. And it's a Western, but with the Coen Brothers, they have such a unique sense of comedy that it's just going to be a good time. I'm hoping that it's going to be a good time, because I admit they've had some lackluster films in the past, but overall, do you have anything to plug, Glenjamin, such as a Letterboxd account? I know I have a Letterboxd account.
We both have Letterboxd accounts, by the way.
Yeah. You can follow me on Letterboxd at Mike KFR.
And because I'm such a huge copycat, I decided to go with Glenn KFR.
Did you? I thought it just said Glenn.
No, it's Glenn KFR.
Oh, cool. So for those of you who don't know Letterboxd, it's essentially just social media for movie lovers. It's pretty great. If you like hearing about movies and rating movies, I suggest you take a look at it. But you can also follow us on Facebook, Keystone Film Review on Facebook, and also on Instagram at Keystone_Film_Review, because Keystone Film Review was already taken, and fuck those people.
How dare they?
Yeah, I apologize. I keep cursing in the end, but
yeah, it was at the we were doing very well.
We were. But the Ballad of Buster Scruggs brought it out of me.
It did.
All right, so that's all for this week.
It's been fun, everybody.
It has been fun. You have a lovely week, and Glenn, I will see you later.
Hey, I'm gonna go buy a mullet now and a shield.
I am gonna just find science to make myself Scottish.
Couldn't just accept that you could get an accent, but science will do it.
I can't do an accent. I need to find science. All right, see you, everybody.